Smelly old Harold and I would have bitten his ankle, but I knew he hadn't changed his socks for a week. Smelly indeed. Mr. Monroe spoke up. I think the best place for the rabbit is right here in the living room on the table by the window. It's light there and he'll get lots of fresh air. Pete's taller than I am, Toby cried. He'll be able to see the rabbit better. Too bad, Squirt. Okay, Mrs. Monroe, though, through clenched teeth, let's put him to bed and make him comfortable, and then we can all get some sleep. Why? Pete asked. I don't want to go to sleep. Mrs. Monroe smiled a little too sweetly at Pete. Look, Ma, said Toby. He's not drinking his milk. Chester nudged me in the ribs. Didn't I tell you? He asked. Excuse me while I make myself available. Hey, said Toby, we gotta name him. Can't that wait until tomorrow? Asked Mr. Monroe. The boys shouted in unison. No, he has to get a name right now. I have to say I agree with them. It took them 3 days to name me, and those were the 3 most anxious days of my life. I couldn't sleep at all, worrying that they were going to call me Fluffy, as Mrs. Monroe suggested. Well, all right, sighed Mrs. Monroe. What about, say, Bun Bun? Uh-oh, there she goes again, I thought. Where does she get them? Yuck, we all said. Well then, how about Fluffy? She offered hopefully. Pete looked at his mother and smiled. You never give up, do you, Ma? Meanwhile, Chester, who had been named Fluffy for a short time, was rubbing against Mrs. Monroe's ankles and purring loudly. No, Chester, not now, she said, pushing him aside. He wants to help us name him, don't you, Chester? Toby asked and scooped him up into his arms. Chester shot me a look. I could tell this was not what he had in mind. Come on, Harold, Toby called. You've got to help with the name, too. I joined the family, and serious thinking began. We all peered into the box. It was the first time I had really seen him. So this is a rabbit, I thought. He sort of looks like Chester, only he's got longer ears and a shorter tail, and a motor in his nose. Well, said Pete, after a moment, since we found him at the movies, why don't we call him Mr. Johnson? There was a moment of silence. Who's Mr. Johnson? Asked Toby. The guy who owns the movie theater, Pete answered. No one seemed to like that idea. How about Prince? Said Mr. Monroe. Dad, said Toby, are you kidding? Well, I had a dog named Prince once, he replied lamely. Prince, I thought, that's a silly name for a dog. We found him at a Dracula movie. Let's call him Dracula, Toby said. That's a stupid name, said Pete. No, it's not. And anyway, I found him, so I should get to name him. Mom, you're not going to let him name him, are you? That's favoritism, and I'll be traumatized if you do. Mrs. Monroe looked in wonder at Pete. Please, Mom. Please, Dad. Let's name him Dracula, cried Toby. Please, please, please. And with each please, he squeezed Chester a little harder. Mrs. Monroe picked up the bowl of milk and moved toward the kitchen. Chester followed her every movement with his eyes, which now seemed to be popping out of his head. When she reached the kitchen door, she turned back and said, Let's not have any more arguments. We'll compromise. He's a bunny, and we found him at Dracula movie, so let's call him Bunnicula. Bunnicula? That would make everybody happy, including me. What about me? Muttered Chester. I won't be happy until she puts down that milk. Well, you guys, is that okay with you? She asked. Toby and Pete looked at each other, and then the rabbit, and a smile grew on Toby's face. Yeah, Ma, I think that name is just right.